G'day listeners and welcome back to another episode of the Keeper League podcast. We're the AFL fantasy podcast that doesn't talk about the superstars. We only talk about the lesser knowns and the players who will bring value to your draft and Keeper League teams. I'm your host Heff, and today I am joined by Jeppa to talk about the West Coast Eagles. How are you, mate?
Good, Heff. How are you, bud? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, not bad, mate. Just trying to get through these pre-season episodes. You're actually the last podcast to record, so save the best till last, obviously. But
West Coast are pretty relevant, aren't they?
Well, absolutely. This is probably one of the longest show docs I've actually got here, so quite a few players to get through. We'll try to keep it a short, sharp, and shiny episode, but I don't blame you if we do go overboard. That's for sure. Before we get started, though, maybe just give us a bit of insight, bit of a background on your AFL fantasy life that you lead.
Yeah, so I actually had to look this up. Someone asked me this the other day. All started with Jeppas Juniors back in 2012.
Yeah.
So over 10 years in the fantasy forum as such, and did some writing for DT Talk for about 5 years. Always had an interest with young rooks and juniors and the under-18 system, state leagues and that kind of thing. So would always go down, watch what I could in terms of what would happen in WA. And yeah, these days it's a lot of it's string, so it's a bit easier. And then now just doing stats and fantasy talk on Plus Six podcast with Pete.
Yeah, no, it's a great read, and the AFL rating site as well. I guess is associated with the Plus Six podcast as well. Such an amazing resource. But yeah, it's great to hear your insights on that podcast too. Like I said, there's a lot of classic content out there these days, but it's also important to listen to all of it, I find, and I think the Plus Six podcast is a great resource there as well. So well done with that one, mate.
Oh, look, it's all Pete's work. I'm going to take zero credit.
Okay.
He does God's work over there. It's but yeah, look, we chime in and compliment each other, and yeah, look, it's been a great pre-season this year, and it's all about getting bigger and better each year, isn't it?
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. All right, we'll get stuck into the West Coast Eagles. So I guess we'll talk about the team in general first. So you're obviously a rebuilding side, apparently going to go even harder at the rebuild this year. Do you just want to give us what you expect this year of the Eagles and what the fantasy implications might be?
Yeah, so big changing of the guard by the looks of it. Our top end of age in terms of our list is really high. You know, the likes of McGovern, Hearn, Shuey, Nick Nat, etc. So there's going to be a changing of the guard this year, no doubt. I thought they would ease in the rooks and the first and second year players a little bit, but it doesn't seem like that. It seems like they're going to throw them in the deep end. And yeah, look, that's going to equate to really good fantasy returns early on some of the lesser likes. And yeah, it might mean a bit of pain in terms of West Coast, in terms of the game plan and being competitive on a weekly basis. So I think the desire is to play a faster game for West Coast, but in reality, there's going to be times where they're going to have to hold on to the footy and revert back to that chipmark game.
Yeah, there might be a bit of pain ahead for the West Coast fans, but you just got to realise it's probably for the greater good in the end, and there might be some fantasy gems we can pick up along the way as a result. So hopefully that's the way it works out anyway. But look, we'll get stuck into the show. The format this year, we're doing undervalued, we're doing breakout contenders, and we're doing stash options. So we'll get into some undervalued players first. And the first one I want to talk about is Andrew Gaff. So he was once a premier winger in the league. Well, in terms of fantasy, he was one of the best midfielders in the competition. Averaged 111 between 28 and 2019 as well. He just wasn't the same player as we saw in the past last year. The average went from 97 down to 81 last year. Why do you think this was the case? Is it an overall trend in the AFL with wingers, or is it something more, I guess, with the West Coast system? And what's your expectations for this season?
Yeah, look, I think all teams are trying to play faster and stick away from that, wing chipmark game, like we said. Gaffy last year especially really struggled with fitness. Probably admitted he would be overweight in terms of footballer, but yeah, this year I think he's lost a ton of weight for his size and looks super trim and fit, and it's just his age. Is the 110 plus Gaffy going to come back? I don't think so. I think it's very unlikely, but there's a lot of positives to say. He could go 90 plus, like I said earlier, when the times are that West Coast will hold on to the footy in the back half, they do chip it to the wings and he'll be there. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom in Gaffy. I think, definitely those 110s are gone, but he's still going to put up good numbers this year.
Yeah, in keeper leagues, like in startup drafts and things like this, he's a play slides purely on age. But in existing leagues and also in your startups, I guess, in startups, he's basically a player you get super cheap. Like you'll pick him up way down the order and still get like at least an 80+ average, I think, out of him. No worries there.
Easy.
And then in your kind of already established leagues, he's won your target in your trades because people are going to have lesser value of him. And if you're gunning for a flag or whatever, it's just easy points in for not giving up a lot of value. So, yeah, he's definitely one I like as an undervalued option this season. Speaking of undervalued options, we'll move on to Dom Sheed. So, basically has pretty consistent average 90s over his career or since his kind of breakout season anyway. Only played one game in 2022, so he's another one that kind of falls into maybe that undervalued category. He's only 27, has a midfield role you'd expect. Because in last year, in his single game, he still had 88% of the CBAs. So, what are your expectations for Sheed this year?
Yeah, looks from pre-season trainings and what I've seen down at Mineral Resources Park, he's playing as an inside mid, so the role gets a big tick. He's going to be one of the mature heads in that engine room with Tim Kelly and others, whether it's Yeo or the Rooks. It's a big role for him to play. It's a 90+ fantasy season for Sheed, for sure. I can't see him getting any attention. He's not the greatest kick in the world, but he's still going to find the footy, and that's been his talent, I suppose, or his knack for his career to date. So, lots to like about Sheed. Yeah,
especially he's probably, 27 is not young, but he's still going to probably have 3 or 4 good years out of him if you pick him up now in your draft. So Sheed's one I definitely like. Because he'll slide again, just given what happened last year. Speaking of guys who are going to play in the midfield, Elliot Yeo is the next one. Only played 5 games in 2022, an average 57.4. But he's definitely averaged 100+ in the past. What makes him so attractive this year is obviously the back status he was given his role at the end of last year. You've been watching a bit of pre-season training and intra-clubs and stuff like that. Has he been in the midfield and all that sort of stuff?
He has. He's been switching with Jimby between halfback and inside mid. So, that's a role we love, really, especially for West Coast. If they're going to hold on to the footy behind the ball as they have, there's going to be the marks game, and then Yoey's going to get the tackle numbers when he goes inside. So you get the best of both worlds with that. And I think that is probably undercited or underrated by a lot of coaches out there. He's going to fill the stat sheet really well. He was BOG in the intra-club on Friday night that I witnessed.
Yep.
And if he can stay fit, the sky's the limit for Yo. He's, again, one of the leaders at the club now. So he's got big shoes to fill, and he's got to lead these young boys, protect the young boys coming through.
Do you want to put a number on the average you're expecting this year?
Oh, it's 90+ for sure. I'm not game enough to say 100+, but I think he can definitely push it. Yeah.
No, he's definitely an attractive option out there, especially given that defensive status too. A lot of people liking him, both classic drafts and keeper leagues all alike. So, get on board Yeo this year. I reckon he's in for a good season, if he can remain fit, that is. Another one that's not really thought of as much as, being fantasy relevant, but Jame Cripps is the next player I want to talk about, purely because in the last 9 games of 2022, he averaged 81.8. And his average age before, I actually had him in a premiership side in a keeper league in 2018, and he was really handy for me that year. He's got some history with he can score okay. And he's a bit of a senior head in that side as well. So do you reckon as a late pickup, Jame Cripps could be value?
Yeah, as a late pickup, it just depends where, for sure. He's one of the leaders at the club, being 30 years of age.
Yeah.
Half forward, real pressure type fella. Gets the tackles, probably a lot underrated at times amongst the fantasy community, for sure. Depends how late you go, Heff. It's obviously deep into drafts. But other than last year, I think he tore a pec or strained a pec muscle at the start of last year. That put him on the back foot a little bit. So, upside this year is really good. So, picking an average of what I think he can do, I think it's, 75 is probably his best. Where we're going to be, there's not going to be that much footy going in our front half compared to other teams.
Yep.
So that needs to be taken into consideration a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. But even on last year's average, 73.1, that made him the 32nd best forward overall. I think there was about 11 guys ahead of him that have lost forward status. So, I guess there's a few that have been added as well. But it could put him up around that 20 range if he improves to that 75. Could even be, around the top 20 mark if everything goes to plan. So, yeah, just could be some value there late in drafts, I think. Now, I've just done midfield rankings and I had Tim Kelly way down in the abyss. I don't have a lot of faith in him. Can you change my mind at all, Jeppa?
Well, he's the number one man in the engine room for West Coast, but he gets a lot of attention.
Yeah.
There hasn't been the last year or 18 months, there hasn't been that support around him to help Kelly flourish as such. So hopefully the fitness of Sheed and Yeo can help Kelly, propel forward and get more stats and the like. And that remains to be seen, I suppose. He looks great in terms of fitness and moving. He was up there in the bests for West Coast in the intra-club as well. But yeah, it really hinges on who's around him. The latest data we have was just a bizarre year for West Coast in 2022. So
yeah, true.
Really had to do a lot of the load himself. And, if you're an opposition team, you just put a little bit of attention to Kelly and that was that. So he's definitely on the improve. I still think it's a risky pick because he's first tag for West Coast, I suppose. Where you pick him up in drafts is deep as well. But I had Sheed ahead of Kelly just for the pure fact that, Sheed's going to get off the chain a lot more than Kelly would.
Yeah, I didn't actually factor that in too much to my considerations when thinking about the midfielders around him. So, yeah, I think that will actually be a factor if he's got a few players there to kind of even block for him or, help him with the tag or something like that. It might see a bit of a bump there, but I don't know. We haven't really seen him hit the heights that he did back at Geelong. I think it was in his second year. So, I don't know. I'm just a bit sceptical. I think sometimes we're just kind of hanging on to those first few years and kind of ignoring the last few. But I don't know. I think you are right. He will probably receive a little bit less attention, or at least, at the very least, get a little bit of help in that midfield. So I don't mind that call, Jep. All right, we'll move on to the breakout contenders now. So the first one is Jai Culley. So mid-season draftee last year, number one, mind you, debuted with a 76 and then backed it up with an 87. I think it was a sub-affected game. It was a low score after that and then got suspended. Then came back for the last round, scored 71 in that final game. So yeah, if you take out that kind of low score, it was a 78 average. It looks like he's primed for a midfield role this year. That's all the talk over this side. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it looks like he's going to play the Jack Redden role last year, mate.
Yeah.
Real tall midfielder, tough fella for a youngster. They sort of touted him going around if he didn't get picked up in the mid-season draft, he was going to go around 15 to 20 in that range of the end-of-season draft.
Yeah.
So, comes with a high rating. He, on the Friday night intra-club, he went up for an overhead mark and he got cleaned up in the ribs by one of the waffle fill-ins. It sucked in the big ones for a couple and then up and kept going. Yeah. So, that kind of character screams a lot. Never went off, never went to the bench. He just kept playing through it. He sort of rested at half forward for 5 minutes and then went back into the guts. So, I take a lot of that in terms of character of a young fella coming through. I think in terms of his physical presence at such a young age, that just screams value in a draft sense where he's going to land. I think he's going to be at West Coast for the next 10 years. It seems like he likes the WA lifestyle over here. His Instagram always shows him forward driving on the beach and doing those sort of things, and we've got plenty of that over here. So, yeah, he's got to have looks like he's going to have a long career for West Coast. It looks like West Coast rate him. Yeah. And they're going to give him that role inside mid with, the best way I can describe it is the Jack Redden role.
Yeah. I've been a bit sceptical of him, and I think, I don't know, it just all stems to do with basically being overlooked in the 2021 draft and then going in the mid-season draft. And you say, like, if he was rated to go around the top 15 this year, should we be valuing him with the top 15s? Like, we've seen 4 games from him, and like, should he be down at the value of, say, a draftee this year? I know we've actually seen him play senior footy, and that's completely different. But my thoughts is he more of a classic kind of cheaper short-term option, But you kind of tend to think there is a long-term role there for him, don't you?
No, I do. Yeah, I think obviously his tackle game's there, but he's really, and again, I probably noticed this more in the intra-club on Friday night, and I have paid attention before, but his overhead marking is quite underrated. He's really good overhead. He's super fit, one of the fittest in West Coast whole list, and he gets it done. As an inside mid, he's probably a bit handball happy, but I just think he ticks a lot of boxes. I think Simo loves the way he plays, his toughness, the way he puts his head over the ball, and that's what we need. And there's, the opportunities there under the support of our more senior mids. I think, he's got the keys to the car, so to speak.
Yeah, as this preseason goes on, I'm definitely warming to him more. That was just my thoughts last season and kind of heading into this year. But yeah, like the more I see of him and the more reports I read and all that sort of stuff, I do feel like he's got a bit of an important role to play over the next few years. So yeah, I'm starting to back him in now. We'll move on to Connor West. So he showed some signs. He was a big state league scorer. Was he another mid-season draftee as well the year before?
I think he was the year before. You're right. Yeah, from West Perth.
So what's his role? And I know, can he replicate those state league scores at a senior level? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, he's sort of been a bit of an all sorts, inside mid, half forward, wing. He's played a bit everywhere. He's actually in the B team on the intra-club on Friday night as a half forward, pressure half forward, and I think that's his best role. Like I said, he's super fit, so he can run up and down those lines as much as needed and get amongst it. It's just whether he's best 22, and at this point with a healthy list, he's probably not. What's his best? He's quite a small fella, so he's got to rely on the ground balls. He's not much of a marker. I think there is, better options out there, and he might be on waivers. When he comes into the 22, you can pick him up.
Yep. No, fair enough. He does have forward status, I think, so that might make him a little bit more valuable.
Yeah,
but if he's not in the best 22, he might not be doing too much for you for a while. Another one, I guess, just a player I haven't heard a lot about this preseason, considering how much we heard about him last year, and that's Greg Clark. So he's another elite state league scorer, 110 on debut at the AFL level, and then basically nothing after that. Was used as a sub a lot, and I guess found himself on the wing a bit last year, and he plays more inside at state league level. Does he have a place in the side, and what are your expectations for him?
I think, he's, by the looks of it, he's not best 22. He will get opportunity through injury, though. It's just, unfortunately, they've sort of touted him as that outside winger, outside and inside, so he can play both. It's just, he's not really anywhere near it. And at the back end of last season, even when our list got healthier, he found himself out of the team, even when our list wasn't at its best. So right now, we're looking pretty, healthy. And I think he's up against it, unfortunately, for him to break into the team.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I think a lot of people invested in him quite highly in keeper league drafts, especially the top-up drafts or the redrafts that you do to kind of, once you've picked your keepers, you pick up your players. I think a lot of people went high on him last year, and it might not be the pick that they thought he was at this point in time. But there might be some hope for the future. Wait and see. He is a mature age player though, isn't he?
He is. He does struggle. I think the struggle with Greg Clark specifically is his kicking.
Yep.
He's not the most elite kick, and that's Connor West as well. They're really good finders of the footy. They've just got to learn to use it better in these trainings and pre-seasons and improve in that area to push for the best 22. Yeah,
that's fair enough. All right, stash options is what we're moving on to next. Bailey Williams is the first guy I've got here. He's probably still behind Nick Nat, but when he's been the number one ruck, and I think at the end of the last season, he put up a few 100+ scores. So I'm just I'm questioning his long-term security, really, and I'm a little bit worried about the recruitment of Harry Barnett. I guess you do need backup rucks and to keep developing ruckmen. What are your thoughts on the whole ruck situation at West Coast anyway?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Nick Nat, I think he's 32 years of age. Obviously, time on ground's limited for Nick Nat. They always manage his time on ground, and that R2 is important. It's been Williams in the past. Although this season, I think Callum Jamison really could push into the R2 spot. He's looked super this pre-season.
Yep.
And again, witnessing from Friday night is really going to push Bailey Williams' spot. So with that, Bailey Williams is not a shoo-in for the R2 spot in the 22 in West Coast, unfortunately. So I'd say he's a risky pick. Barnett looks to be a good type. Obviously, a future number one ruckman for the team. Super keen kid. He wants to learn and always really keen to improve. So I think Williams overall is a risky pick with a few guys breathing down his neck.
Jamison's not even a player I had on my radar, so if he can look like getting a few games this year, he might be a good late pickup, just if you need some ruck cover, because God knows I needed it last year. So, if he could, if Nick Nat goes down, which is every possibility, you got to grab the next guy who's going to take that number one role, so he might be worth owning there. All right, let's move on to Campbell Chesser. To be honest, I don't know a lot about him. Haven't seen him play obviously before. A lot of hype about him, and I know because I follow the state league scores and then the junior scores as you do, Jeppa. He only averaged 63.3 as a junior. So I guess my question is, is he more of a salary cap hype because of his price, or can he play a fantasy game in the future? What are your thoughts?
No, he definitely can play a fantasy game. I think that junior year he had that collarbone injury from memory. Okay, I'm testing my memory. Don't quote me, but he did have an interrupted under-18 year. But what we did see was an elite kicker, an outside midfielder, obviously, and a good user of the football, which the Eagles really need. So the hype is real. He kicked 2 goals in the intra-club on Friday night. Only played a half a footy. Yep. He's struggled with his pre-season to date, but keeper league, definitely up there if he's about. I think, he's got a future wing role at West Coast.
Okay.
Whether it's predominantly could even be this year, round one. Hopefully round one. He might not get there for round one. It might be round 2 or round 3. Fitness pending. Sorry.
That's right.
Look, as a fan, obviously as a West Coast fan, I've got big hopes for him. But as a fantasy fan and a draft fan, I think the upside's huge.
All right, that's good to know because, I wasn't too sure about him. And like I said, I don't get to see much of him on the track or anything like that. So, that's good to see. Good to hear. And, hopefully he can be fruitful for fantasy coaches out there. All right, that's it for my list. That's the end of the stash options. You got any other players you want to bring up that might be relevant for our listeners?
Yeah, I've got a couple here. Just Brady Hoff's one who played a bit last year, showed us what his foot skills were and was sort of a draft bolter in that 2022 crop, 2021 draft year. So, like the look of him. It's just biding his time. Again, putting on a bit of size, which he has done, worked hard. He'll be in and out of the 22 early on with a fit West Coast list, the way he plays as that outside mid, and we got quite a lot of them. So, but nevertheless, for the future, he's, as a quarterback role for West Coast, the Nick Dacosses of the world from last year and, Daniel Riches and that kind of thing, controlling the ball behind the footy. Yeah. Like Shannon Hearn does for us now. I was going to mention
that. He's probably in the twilight. So does he jump into that role possibly in the future?
Yeah, for sure. Weatherden's there as well, so that there might be some crossover. But, he definitely could. Great use of the footy as well, which is what West Coast need. Bad kicking is bad football, as my old footy coach used to say. So, he's one I definitely have up there. And the other one's Luke Edwards as well. He's, again, another outside mid winger, but tough as nails. And I think he's going to be there and abouts for the 22 and surprise a few. One that definitely goes under the radar. So, what's his scoring potential? Probably not as good as Chess and Hoff, but an option nevertheless.
Luke Edwards was a player with a high fantasy ceiling as a junior. So he's one who's always piqued my interest. But injuries kind of kept him out. I think you're right. Plays more on the outside, which might not be as good for his fantasy scoring, but he definitely has a lot of potential. And we've seen, in the last 2 years, that West Coast have been pretty keen to try to get him in. It's just the body's let him down a little bit. So I think if he is fit and firing, he definitely could be one to go.
They definitely rate him from what I've seen and given him roles. And, it's there's upside there for sure.
He's the son of Tyson Edwards, isn't he?
He is.
Yeah, that's right. Some good pedigree there.
I think he was one of the last picked of 2020 draft, I'm
Yeah.
going to guess.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was very late in the draft, that's for sure. But yeah, shows good signs. So yeah, he's definitely one I'm excited about. I actually own him on my rookie list in our league, so I've got to elevate him this year, but I will be doing so because I'm with you. I think he could surprise a few. We'll get around some gold members. So we have a membership program in this podcast, and it basically people who sign up as a member, so I can actually take some time to actually get this podcast up and running and going each week. So if it weren't for these members, basically this podcast wouldn't exist anymore. So thank you to the following gold members: Lockie Chisholm, Michael Priest, James Wishart, John Connolly, Scott DeChico, Alan Svensson, Jeff Saunders, David Overall, Alexander Huber, and James Heiniger. So thank you to those gold members. As a reward for signing up as a member, you get access to all the bonus resources on our website. All the rankings should be out by now, so check those out, along with the breakout tracker, along with the draftee fantasy analysis resources. With your drafts coming up, those resources are going to be pretty valuable. So make sure you check them out. If you're keen to sign up, there's a link in the description below. All right, we'll get into some listener questions written specifically for Jep. Our listeners want to know your projections for Hoff. So you've said what you think of him. What do you think he can score this year? This one comes from @Rust2468. Projections for Hoff.
Yeah, this year alone, probably 65 would be his average to 70, I think.
Yep.
Being a bit conservative, but like I said earlier, future quarterback of the West Coast Eagles. So long-term outlook is pretty high.
Yep, could be a big scorer back there one day. @Mortard wants to know, is Rotham in your best 22?
Probably not. Not to start. Would need injuries to break into the 22, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I don't think he's listed in a lot of the media best 22s either, so might be a way off. @Begos Boys wants to know your thoughts on Jade Hunt this year. There's a paddock of +6s on the wing at Optus. So yeah, he was a bit of a surprise pickup for me. I wasn't really expecting it. Does kind of suit a need for you guys. What are your thoughts on the recruitment of Jade Hunt?
Yeah, definitely interesting. Speed was obviously his biggest asset, and yeah, to break the lines from back half to front half. So he played on the wing in the intra-club on Friday. I think his role's between wing and half forward. So, look, we've got to ignore what he's done in Melbourne in the past because he's going to have a bigger role with West Coast. He's starting 22 in West Coast team, and I think the outlook is really good. If I was going to put a number on it, it's 70 plus, probably 75.
Yep.
And that's pretty healthy for a player of, what the community ranks him at right now. So he could be a good draft slider and a bargain pick.
It's probably underpriced in Classic as well, and I know there's a few Classic coaches out there. I won't mention their names, but they don't want me to talk about him. So, yeah, but I reckon it could be a good one.
Yeah, look, I'll lift the lid on it. He's actually in my Classic team now. But, whether round one's there or not, but he presents a lot of value in Classic. And he presents a lot of value in draft as well, just because, again, not many rate him.
Yeah, exactly. There's not a lot of people out there, I think, that want to start him, but there's a few out there that have him and don't want the secret to get out, I don't think. But anyway, it's out now. @Matty DeSena, he wants to know who's more likely to have a better season, Chesser or Jinby? What are your thoughts?
Oh, look, I suppose I've got to play straight back here and base it on the pre-seasons to date and say Jinby.
Yep.
And Jinby's going to have the more fantasy relevant role, right? So switching with Yeo halfback inside mid, that's a dream role for a first year player, especially in fantasy. So, you'd have to say Jinby, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think so. Given, just how highly touted he is coming into the side, we did a bit of Twitter spaces on the draft night, and we were both pretty high on him as well. And just given Chesser with the injuries and stuff like that, he might be eased in a bit. But I reckon they're pretty high on Jinby and, pretty keen to show off their new recruit. So, yeah, I'm on Jinby as well. Anyways, we'll wrap it up. We've got a live show at the Highway this weekend, 25th of February. I guess the support band for DT Talks live show. So if you're in Adelaide and want to come say good day, head down to the live show. You've been to a few live shows over in Perth for the DT Talk boys. Always a good time, aren't they?
Oh, they're absolutely amazing in Perth, and they'll put on a great show in Adelaide. I'm spewing I can't go.
Well, Jep, where can our listeners find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, at Jeppa DT, sorry, on Twitter. And then the +6 podcast with Pete. We can talk stats and fantasy and all things footy. So, yeah,
And that's on all the platforms?
Yeah, on all the usual platforms, Spotify and the like. Like I said, Pete does God's work. He's working pretty hard this preseason. And you can follow him at aflratings.com as well, his website with short, sharp notes on players of interest. There's a search tool on his website as well where you're, if there's a player of note like Jade Hunt, you can go in and find notes on him. So,
yep.
Yeah, pretty cool resource, and looking forward to the big year ahead.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I've got the Twitter notifications on for AFL ratings, so every time something comes up, I get a pop-up, and I feel like I'm just always on top of everything that's happening in the competition. So, yeah, cannot talk up that resource enough. But yeah, while I'm talking up resources, get around Keeper League Pod on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. Get around our sponsors, Manscaped. Use Keeper20 at checkout. Get 20% off and free shipping. And also sign up as a member if you're keen to support the podcast. There is a link in the description below. Anyways, that's it from me. Thank you, Jeppa, for helping us out today and jumping on the podcast, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks very much, Heff.